Hi, everyone. Here we are back for Chapter 2 of Teaching to Empower, Taking Action to Foster Student Agency, Self-Confidence, and Collaboration. Chapter 2 is called Starting with Ourselves. So it's going to be a lot about teacher empowerment. Yesterday was about student agency. Some questions we'll explore today are: what motivates an educator's call to educate? And how does that affect learners? How is teaching a voyage of self and collaborative discovery? How does educator empowerment contribute to student empowerment? And how can educators model empowerment? So, if we start with the call to educate, we're going to look to Daniel Pink in the book Drive. In the book, he talks about three components for what motivates us: autonomy, having some level of self-direction; mastery, the opportunity to better our skills and build competence; and purpose, meaning to the work we do, and contribution to the world or serving others. Similarly, Simon Sinek in Start With Why, a wonderful book I recommend you read, talks about the center of everything you do should start with why. Why do you do what you do? What's the purpose? Getting at that purpose then gets you to knowing how to do what you do and what do you do. So a lot of times we start with the what and the how, and we forget the why. So today we're going to be thinking about: what's your why? Why do you teach? What is your call to educate? When I think about my call to educate, I realize that my why started very young. In elementary school, I wrote in my fifth grade yearbook that the job I wanted to do when I grew up was be a teacher. And that really comes from being from a line of teachers in my family. My grandma on the left, actually in both pictures, my grandma was born in 1927, and her first job was working in a one-room schoolhouse in Nebraska. And having a teacher for a grandma, even if she lived far away from me, I got to visit her over summers, inspired a love of teaching. She passed that love of teaching down to some of her 8 kids. My mom was a teacher, and my aunt was also a teacher for 40 years. And although my grandma passed earlier this year, 2021, I was very fortunate to have her join me in putting my first classroom together. So I have a very big love for teaching because of my family. But as I started to actually start teaching, I couldn't just take my family's love for teaching to become my love for teaching. I had to discover my own why. And so, in the time of college and student teaching, I had a really good professor named Wendy Ostroff who cultivated this sense of curiosity. This is one of the books she wrote, How to Promote and Sustain Deep Learning. And in that time of discussions about curiosity, I was exposed to Rachel Carson, who says if a child is to keep alive his inborn sense of wonder, he needs the companionship of at least one adult who can share it, rediscovering with him the joy, the excitement, and the mystery of the world we live in. And I realized that my call to educate was really fostering and cultivating curiosity. A love of learning starts with asking the question, why? How? And being that adult could be my role to rediscover not only the joy for my own learning, but to foster that curiosity and creativity in others. Similarly, the late Sir Ken Robinson said, "We are educating people out of their creative capacities." I believe this passionately, that we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it, or rather, we get educated out of it. And so, what's this disconnect with our why and why we go into education, but then what school and the reality is? From the book Cultivating Curiosity, looking at intrinsic motivation, the author or one of the researchers wrote, You have to spend a lot of time and a lot of energy supporting kids to unlearn how they've been taught to learn for the majority of their lives, which is often wanting to get everything right and pleasing the teacher. How can I, as an educator in the elementary school system, not make it so that students have to go through a K-12 education to unlearn what we just did for 12 or 13 years? And it takes being okay with creating the safe space for taking chances and making mistakes. Telling your students, I'm going to let you bruise yourself, and that's going to be hard to watch, but I'm not going to step in and help. And to have a bigger vision that to build strengths, to build autonomy, to build mastery, to build purpose, a teacher is not there to rescue, but to be a guide because they see the big picture about deep understanding, the big picture of how learning works. And that to learn and to have intrinsic motivation, you have to see yourself as capable. And when you have the confidence and you have the guide and the motivation, and someone helps you achieve and go beyond what you thought, that's where deep learning happens. And with deep learning, you realize that you're doing things not just for the extrinsic motivation, but for the intrinsic motivation. So, my call to educate is not just to get students curious, but to help them build the confidence and the intrinsic motivation so that they can use their gifts to serve one another, just like I hope to do by serving my students and my teachers in helping them discover what their gifts are by doing deep learning. What's your call to educate? You're going to get a chance today to do that through Flipgrid, but what is your call to educate? What's your why? Similarly, in Chapter 2, they talked about teaching as a voyage of self and collaborative discovery. I might have shared this before. You either have the option in the average teaching career to teach 1 year 30 times, or to have 30 unique years of teaching. And while the first one may be easier, I open the curriculum, I go to where I went to last time at this time of the year, what's the point if you're just taking something and putting it on copy and on repeat? And how do we serve our students who are different every single year and bring their each individual strengths and backgrounds into our classroom? And not only are students different each year, you are different. You change each year, just like when you read a story one time and you read it again later in your life, it's a different story. The way you interact with it is different because you have changed. And the same thing has to happen with our teaching. But that doesn't happen easily. It takes a little bit of buy-in and motivation in order to make impact. And on the topic of teacher motivation, a quote from the book, page 30, we have to be comfortable with being works in progress, with being open and flexible, asking questions that lead to new and different solutions and ideas. We have to be willing to try new approaches, to collaborate with others, and to listen without judgment to different perspectives. This isn't about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as the old saying goes. We know that education goes through shifts, paradigm shifts, but it's about being in a space of vulnerability, to want to learn, to want to model learning. And that takes being okay with not knowing everything. But before you can model empowerment and model that growth mindset, you have to take care of yourself. Like the old saying goes, you put your own mask first. Put on your own mask first. If you can't take care of yourself, you cannot be a light for others. You cannot serve others if you are the one that's dim. And I think many of us are in this place where we're feeling really dim and really burnt out. We've been through a very traumatic year, a traumatic experience, and we're being called to do things that might be, again, out of our comfort zone. So as you think about taking care of yourself, think about the different types of self-care. It's not just the physical, it's also the emotional. And a lot of times, what we don't always realize is it's not about doing more. It's about having boundaries on knowing what to do right, what to take care of, where to focus your energy, what's essential. So as we move forward in this teaching to empower experience, know that we have the chance to foster resilience in our students, but it starts with us. It starts with ourselves. Next time, we're going to talk about chapters 4 and 5, which are about self-directed learning, positive interdependence, and student self-reflection. Thank you for watching.